I'm Lisa Senecal.
And I'm Maya May, and We're Speaking starts now. Hey.
Hey, everybody. We're back.
We are.
Yeah, we wanted to, before we get into what the show's going to be about, we have to acknowledge and send our respects to the family of Madeleine Albright. What a tremendous loss to not have this woman with us any longer.
Truly. Absolutely. So everybody, please send your thoughts. This is a really, really good time to center ourselves and remember what's truly important and what truly matters. So please take a moment to do that.
Yep, definitely. And one of the things that really matters that we've been talking about this week is, or we talk about every week, but we're talking about it more this week, is being united. And that is because the Lincoln Project and a bunch of partners have this week launched the Union.
Yes, the Union. We had a town hall. We had a bunch of people who are from the Union. And in case you're wondering what the Union is, it's so many organizations coming together and tapping the talents of everybody in the US who wants to participate in saving our democracy, because we need everyone's help. So regardless of what your talent or skill set is, I'm sure we could put it to you. So you can go to JoinTheUnionUS. And our guest tonight is from one of the organizations, Tedra Cobb. We're excited to talk to her shortly. But before we do, we're going to talk about this whole United We Stand, Divided
we're a shit show.
A shit show. That's, if anybody's been watching what's going on lately, I think we can pretty much agree. It's a shit show, the shit show of the biggest proportions that we've ever seen. And it is so very unfortunate, because if we are not on the same side of a problem, it is really difficult to solve it. And I kind of like, Lisa, like, how do you define freedom? Because I feel like right now, when we talk about freedom, we're talking about two very different kinds of freedom.
Yeah, well, first, freedom spelled Freedom, not Freedumb, which there is way too much freedom going around.
Yeah.
I don't know. Freedom to me is the ability to make choices for ourselves, but not think that other people's choices have to be the same as our own. You know, part of living in a free and open society is that there are going to be times that you're offended. And, you know, listening to some of these Supreme Court hearings that have been going on, I heard John Cornyn yesterday was complaining that one of the court's recent decisions, the Obergefell decision on marriage equality, you know, offended some people's deeply held beliefs. And Judge Jackson's response was, that's the nature of a right, right? Like, we don't all have to agree on what people's rights should be. If those things, if we have to only have rights that everybody can agree upon, I don't know what's left.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And so the strength of a nation, the strength of our country, where we have all of these many different voices, is to be able to hear each other, understand those differences. But just because you do something doesn't mean I have to do that thing. And so for me, when I hear freedom, to me, it's like the freedom to be able to make those choices, but not the freedom to tell somebody else what to do with their life. And I feel like some people want the freedom to control other people. And I'm like, not really about that. I don't feel like that is the path forward.
Yeah, that's so much of what we're seeing the GOP do right now, is that they are so terrified of losing power and losing the grip that they've been able to have on the levers of power, because our country's demographics are changing. And so they are attempting to push more and more people out of the process and consolidate their power so they can continue to hold on to it without needing to be able to have a majority of Americans supporting them.
Yeah. And so we are all about bringing people into the process. So the more people, the merrier. That's what the union is about. So let's actually play that ad really quick so we can see that.
For 240 years, our union endured. But it's under challenge like never before.
We're engaged anew in a struggle between democracy and autocracy.
Can we save democracy? Overcome authoritarian movements at home and abroad? Come together to ensure the government of the people, by the people, for the people endures? We say we can.
Democracy will and must prevail.
Play your part by joining the union. The union gives Americans the tools to mobilize friends and neighbors, to amplify our voices, organize for democracy, and defeat Trumpists and authoritarians from the White House to the City Council. It matches the skills of volunteers and activists with campaigns and causes, work that must be done to protect democracy. Lincoln believed it was the sacred duty of every president to preserve the Union at all costs. We believe it's the sacred duty of every American.
Now it's up to all of us, to we the people.
Because together we will win. America will endure. The Union. All in.
I love that. All in.
I do too. Yeah, it's a really inspiring spot, and it's a really inspiring concept behind it. We know that there's this authoritarian, autocratic march happening within the United States right now, but we also know that the majority of Americans still support democracy, and the union is going to be a wonderful tool for people to have to be able to work together to make sure that we preserve democracy.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with that, would love to bring our guest on. She's the Democratic congressional candidate from New York's 21st district in 18 and in 20, a rural red district, running against, trigger warning, everybody, Elise Stefanik. It's like almost like I don't even want to say her name anymore.
It's almost like watching one of those old dramas where everyone goes boo, hiss.
Exactly. Yes. Which it's almost like that's how our politics is. That's how it works now, right? So while you didn't win, you succeeded in other ways. You brought awareness to your district. You built a massive social media following and a grassroots movement, which actually reached millions. And you used that momentum to start Backroads PAC, which is an organization. It has a simple mission: build a community to ensure rural Democrats never travel the path to victory alone. So
yes.
Welcome back to We're Speaking.
Thank you. I'm always happy to be here.
Yeah, we're incredibly excited to talk to you. Tell us a little bit, for the people who don't know, about Backroads PAC.
Sure. So along my campaign, running in rural America is really hard. And I felt along my campaign that I didn't really have someone to go to with questions. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have a coach. I had amazing staff. I had amazing volunteers. We built a really supportive community. But I said, listen, I think that people need a support mechanism in rural America. And that's what I wanted to do with Backroads PAC. There's a saying, you can't be everything to everybody, but you can be something to somebody. And this is the something that I can do for those folks in these tough rural races running for Congress. I can mentor and coach. I can let them give me a call when they're frustrated. I can give them financial support. And one of the things we did was we actually had a poll. We did a poll last year about messaging. What is the kind of thing that percolates or speaks to rural America? How do you communicate those things? So I'm trying to sort of fill in the gaps and support candidates to the best of my ability with Backroads PAC. And I have to say, Thank you to all of the people who supported me in my campaign. And thank you to all the people who are supporting those candidates who are running right now in these tough rural races.
We appreciate the work that you are doing so much. And we're very excited that you and Backroads PAC were one of the first organizations to be signing on with the union and be part of this pro-democracy organization for Backroads PAC. What capacity increase are you hoping for?
Yeah, I think that these candidates really need boots on the ground. It's very hard. We're not talking about Brooklyn where it's a teeny tiny, right? You go up and you can just knock on doors and you can hit a whole bunch of people. We are talking about huge landmass for many of these rural candidates. So having the capacity to knock on doors, to make the phone calls, we need volunteers to help support these candidates. And so if there's anyone out there who wants to do that, we need you, we want you, and we welcome you. And so to have folks join the union and say, oh, I'm there to help people in these tough rural races is really important. And actually, I want to just speak to age, and that there is no age requirement. On my campaign, I will tell you, we had folks who were older. We had folks who were, who had been in the trenches for a long time. And we had a lot of young people who wanted to be involved. And those young people were welcome to the table. And quite frankly, they were the ones who helped all of us with NGP, understanding how to cut turf, and told a lot of us how to knock on those doors and what to do. And so I really want to encourage anybody who's watching this, regardless of your age, you're needed.
Exactly. Needed. We all need to work together. That all in from the spot that's the refrain that I'm going with right now. All in, all in, all in. So as you talked about the messaging, which I think is really important, the messaging for rural voters, especially because we are trying to now across America bring people together.
Right.
What is the kind of messaging that you found has worked?
Well, I think that the first and foremost in rural America, forget about Donald Trump. The folks who are hardcore Trumpers, they're not moving anywhere. So we really need to talk about the issues that are at hand. People are having a hard time getting food on the table. They're having a hard time with childcare. They're having a hard time keeping their kids in school or with jobs. And I think each candidate brings their own personal experience and passion to the table. For me, it was healthcare. I had an experience with healthcare. My daughter almost lost the ability to walk and to stand. She has a pre-existing condition. Elise Stefanik voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act and to strip away those pre-existing condition protections. That's why I ran. I could talk about that from my personal experience. We've got veterans, we've got teachers, we have folks in the clergy, we have farmers. Each of those candidates needs to talk about their personal experience, their passion, and try to find common ground. And unfortunately, I think what's happening is this clash so often that we're not listening to each other. And so it's not about party. It is about the democracy. It is about our communities and making our communities better. And so I encourage candidates to reach out and first and foremost, listen, find that common ground, and then go from there.
Yeah, it's those kitchen table issues, right?
Yeah.
It goes across party. It goes across a lot of generations. We see it, a lot of it getting magnified for the younger generation because so many things are becoming more and more out of reach for them. Do you think that the accomplishments that the Biden administration has already made, is that getting through? It's very frustrating to see folks who voted against the infrastructure bill now going back home and being like, hey, how are you enjoying that money that's coming from Washington? Didn't I do a great job? Like, you voted against it.
Yeah. So I think candidates certainly have to talk about that. I think one of the things for those of us who are in the trenches day in and day out is that we get frustrated by that. But I'll tell you, most people don't really know. They don't know how their congressional representative voted. They don't know what's going on. And that's our job. Our job as candidates, our job as supporters of candidates is to help inform candidates or our communities about what what these congressional representatives are doing or not doing, what's detrimental. And that's also where the union can come in. Letters to the editor. And on my campaign, I had lots of volunteers writing letters and holding Elise Stefanik accountable for her past votes. So there's a lot of work to be done on that. But I think a lot of most people, again, going back to those bread and butter issues, most people are just worried about getting through the day. And so I really encourage candidates to focus on the needs of their constituents. Why are they running? Who they are, why they're running, and what they hope to do. I love stories. So if I can tell you a story about how, for me, one of the things that happened to me in 2018, the first conversation I had with somebody I had just announced. And I was on a plane. And as you probably know, you have to go and meet with folks from the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. And so I'm on a plane. I buckle my seatbelt. I take a deep breath. And I said to the guy next to me, hi. And he said, hi. And he said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to DC. And what do you do? And, he said where he worked. And I said, he said, why are you going to DC? And I said, I'm ready for Congress. I mean, I could barely get the words out. I covered my face. He's like, that is so cool. And I said, it is? And he said, yeah. And we started talking. I said, the problem for me is I see this clash, right? And I kind of said this, I said the crazy right, and the uber left. And I was a little flip. And he said, well, I guess I'm a crazy conservative. At which point I took a deep breath and I said, well, I bet we agree on more than we disagree. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, like the environment. You were talking about fishing. Do you agree we need clean air and clean water? Yep. And I said, well, we agree on that. Healthcare. Do you agree that people should have access to healthcare? They should be able to see the doctor. They should be able to get prescription drugs. They should be able to be protected if they have pre-existing conditions. He said, yep, I agree on that. I said, great. We agree on that. We had a longer conversation, but the long and short is this. If we pause and we take maybe the pressure off of ourselves, we forget about policy and we just say, can we agree on clean air and clean water? Can we start at the agreement? That's where we find common ground. And so I encourage every candidate, whether you're knocking on doors for a town supervisor or a mayoral race, or whether you're knocking on doors for a legislator, as I did, and as a county legislator, or a congressional candidate, find the common ground. Pause, listen, and try to find common ground. That's what the union is able to do. That's what we're able to do, bringing all of these voices from different places. And that's what I hope we can provide to our candidates in Backroads PAC and help coach them to do that.
Truly, I love it because it's all about the humanity of it. It's bringing the humanity back to the process, this idea of listening and hearing. As technologies have developed, and I'm just really curious about you, especially for the people who are interested in volunteering, what are the ways that people would get involved? I know you mentioned knocking on doors, but are there virtual town halls? Are there in-person town halls? What are the kind of activities?
Yeah, so candidates already are hosting Zoom events. They're hosting in-person events. They are on Facebook, they're on Twitter. A lot of rural places rely on Facebook. So the candidates are going to be able to communicate in those best ways. But if you want to, if anybody watching this wants to volunteer, and you just don't even know who's running, Google who's running, look at who's running in your district, and then choose those candidates and say, a lot of their websites, you can sign up on websites or again, through Facebook or Twitter and become involved with those candidates. Believe me, they want you, they'll put you to work. Even if it's early to knock on doors. Right now in New York, people are petitioning and they need petition carriers just to get on the ballot. Every state is different. Some states are still unfortunately carving out what the congressional districts are going to be. But again, bring your experience to the table. If you're a writer, then say, I'll write letters to the editor. I'll write letters to my neighbors. One of the things that is really powerful is saying, I know that I've got 20 neighbors. I know that they don't always vote, but we have these conversations. Host a meet and greet, or just host a conversation about the candidates. Talk to them about why you're supporting the candidate. That's a lot of neighbor to neighbor work that can only happen when we've got passionate people who are fully engaged.
Yeah, and speaking of passion, you mentioned a little bit earlier, young people. Maya and I are crazy fans
enthralled
of Gen Z, and I know that you are too. There is so much passion and power in that generation, but they tend not to, they sort of have to tap themselves. The people who are already in positions of authority are not looking the way they should to Gen Z. So what messages do you have for the candidates who you're working with about engaging? It's a huge population.
Yeah.
Like, you are really missing the boat if you are not tapping into these young people.
Yeah, ask them to help you with Twitter, ask them to help you with Snapchat, ask them to help you with Instagram, whatever it is that they're using. Let's remember, folks, the former of the United States thought he was going to have a full house at one of his events. And it was the TikTok generation that completely made him a fool. Okay, he made himself a fool, but those kids showed him what a fool he was. And I just really want to do a shout out to them and say, we need you. You know, if you think that you have the ability to do TikToks, to help those candidates with TikToks, just say, listen, I'm awesome at this. I want to work on this. And keep pushing yourself forward and say, hey, you got to listen to me.
I absolutely love it because it does energize the movement, because right now a lot of us are, we're hitting that wall where it's like, I'm feeling a little exhausted, and to have that like kind of breath of fresh air come in is so incredibly helpful. So now that we're talking about the young people, the older generations, do you see that there's like an ideological split at all in rural areas? Like, what's happening now? Because we see like, this attempt at a culture war. Well, it shouldn't attempt. It's like a culture attack, right? And then we're talking about the humanity and trying to listen to each other and find common ground. What are you actually seeing when you're out there as far as what people truly want to get engaged with?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that in rural places, Fox News has really got its toehold. And that's really very difficult. I tell you, I live in northern New York, and I was delivering meals after I was elected. When I was elected, I served on the Office for the Aging Advisory Board. So one of the first thing I did when I lost was volunteer for the Office for the Aging to deliver meals. And it's a really horrifying and heartbreaking thing to see Confederate flags in northern New York. So I really want to make people aware that this culture of divisiveness has really gotten a foothold. And I realize how difficult that is for folks. It's hard for me. It is just hurts the soul, but we have got to keep going. And that also, I just want to say, that brings me to when we have young people who show up at meetings, when we have a young person who says, I want to do something, don't look at them and say, we've been doing this for a long time. That's not going to work. Say, okay, what do you want to do? How do we help you do it? We as older people have to be welcoming so that they now become the future volunteers. Because if we don't, and we say no, they won't come back to the table. And we've got to engage them and keep them at the table. So I think that's one thing. And I think in rural places, those kids who are registering, those young people who are new voters, they tend to be Democrat. They tend to be Democrat. So we want to engage them. That's the importance of what we're doing. I think the other thing is, if I could, Elise Stefanik just voted on legislation that would protect and give veterans who have been exposed to burn pits overseas, to provide them with healthcare. Elise Stefanik, who represents Fort Drum, who represents the district that has the most veterans voted against healthcare for people. That's what we need people to be talking about. That's why we need volunteers. We need every single person to know that their representative in New York 21, their representative voted against protections for and healthcare for those veterans. We want everyone in every district to talk about how their current representatives, whether it's Jim Jordan, whether it's Elise Stefanik or Marjorie Taylor Greene or anybody, we need your help to let voters know how their representatives are voting. Because you know what? Their representatives, their congressional representatives like Elise Stefanik are going to lie, and they're not going to talk about their voting record.
Yeah, that's so important. I am very glad that you ended there, getting the truth out about the harm that Elise Stefanik continues to do. The degree to which she is disingenuous is the nicest thing I can say. But your work, Tedra, we are so inspired and so appreciative of everything you've done to this point. Your work with Backroads PAC, running and serving. You are a shining example of what being a community member really needs to be. And I hope people are excited about the opportunity to do work with Backroads PAC. So check them out directly, and also go to JoinTheUnionUS and sign up, and you can be connected directly as a volunteer for Backroads PAC as well.
Thanks so much, everybody. Again, I'm always honored to be here. Keep up the work that you're doing, and know that you have a lot of us behind you cheering you on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tedra. I absolutely love it, because it's the way it sounds so normal and nice to bring humanity back to things, and to hear that in the rural areas that people are as you call it, the kitchen table issues, like people actually genuinely want to see their needs met. Shocking.
Yeah. And you know, it's so funny to hear that the message that kids get, young people get when they try to become involved is, hey, we've been doing this a long time. We got this. Like, have you
don't got this. We don't got it.
Right. Do not let us continue to do things the way we've been doing them. Obviously, this is a tremendous mistake. So please become more involved, outnumber some of us, and fix some of the things that, you know, we're entrenched in the way we've been doing things and not necessarily working for an awful lot of Americans.
Yeah. We need you, and we need you to join the union as well. And that's everybody, all generations, all ages. It's a huge undertaking, and it is worth it because the stakes are super high. How high? We usually run it up top, but it's just too crazy. So we're running it now. We got to know what we're up against. Last week in the Republican Party. Let's do it.
Thank you for letting me and my wife be able to send our kids to kindergarten without them being sexualized.
We have the makings of yet another false flag operation, this time in the far-flung land of Ukraine.
Madison Cawthorn called Zelensky a thug.
Madison is wrong.
You support his reelect?
Yes.
Remember that Zelensky.
Помните, что Зеленский головорез. Помните, что украинское правительство.
So our hearts go out to you, the pride of the Tsar, the pride of Moscow. We continue to root for them.
It would be a lot more convincing if Zelensky didn't have George Soros's hand up his back, moving his mouth.
The president has had a Bambi's baby brother moment.
And my father was, what did my father say? That my father sent a lot of javelin missiles. Listen, my father's always had great intuition. Under my father.
I have never seen the CDC coming out saying, oh, you've got to get your second polio shot. You got to get your third. You got to get your fourth.
At one time, science said man came from apes. If that is true, why are there still apes? Think about it.
You know, now you're getting too smart.
We have a president who's, as I said in the angle, essentially a hologram.
Trump would take one day off to go golfing, you know, every couple weeks, whatever. Biden every weekend, he's got 3-day weekends. Must be nice.
Our friends and enemies alike see this once great nation led by a weak, dementia-ridden fossil.
2 tours in Iraq. Don't tell me I haven't worked.
Back off, buddy. You're gonna
You back off.
Oh, come on. Never that'll happen.
Let's sit down.
Do not let these people say, don't worry, we got this. We want to keep doing things the way we have been.
Yeah.
No.
We were talking about this earlier, Lisa, and the performative nature of everything that we are seeing. It's like it's become a caricature of a caricature of a caricature because everybody wants to be a star in their own world. And what did you say that? What did the moms say?
Oh, yeah. It's, you know, don't, if you keep doing that with your face, it's going to freeze that way.
Yeah.
And that's really the way Republicans are at the point. Like they have been performative for so long. I think a lot of them have just lost themselves.
They're stuck that way. They're like Donnie Brasco when he goes in to the mob and he's like a secret, you know, like the double. And then all of a sudden now he's like in the mob. They've forgotten completely. Like maybe they didn't believe this before and they were just doing it for power. But now they have lied enough that they have bought their own lies. This is the world they live in. And it is so very important that we pay attention to that because the kind of world that we want to create, we can't allow it. Every time it pops up, we have to call it out for what it is and say, this is noise, this is a distraction, this is meant to tire us out and keep us from focusing on the mission because they may appear crazy on the surface, but they are well-funded and well-organized underneath. And so that's the stuff that we need to pay attention to.
Yep, we really do. We also need to pay attention to tomorrow night. The Breakdown with Tara Setmayer and Rick Wilson is back. It's at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 Pacific. And we will be back with you next Wednesday at 7 p.m. 4 Pacific. Until then, go check out JoinTheUnion.us. Lots of ways to feel empowered and not like this is all just happening to you. You can affect it because, as we keep saying, there are more of us than there are of them.